Well, my name is Frank Mirabile. I'm a small business owner. I grew up in Catonsville. Presently live in Western Howard County. I decided to get into this race in 2010 because, like many of us, we find that our representatives aren't really representing us. And you get to the point where you're tired of pounding your hand against the table on this side of the TV. And I decided to do something about it, which was to step into the race and that my voice be heard. And as I found during the 2010 race that my voice was being recognized and paralleled by many people. We all had the same convictions, is that we're not being represented by our present Congressional 7 representative, and we needed a change. And in the 2010 election, a lot of Tea Partiers came out, a lot of convictions about the Constitution, small business owners, family issues all became very actively on the forefront of things, and that was right up my alley. And looking at Elijah Cummings' voting record and his history in Congress, and walking the streets of Baltimore City, the primary group that he calls his constituents, you find that there's not a lot being done in that area. In fact, you find more and more social dependency where people want jobs. They're financially hurting. They're socially hurting. You've got statistics where for a young black male in the city to reach the age of 26 is almost a miracle. So the city's got a lot of issues, but that's just one part of our district. And out here in Western Howard County and now in Northern Baltimore County, we find that he is a ghost primarily. So, 10. This is very serious. As we know, we have escalating debt. We have, in some walks of life, they're estimating our unfunded liabilities, if you will, to be in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. One last number I saw was $120 trillion. Just in the deficit alone, we're running, by the time this administration is out, we're going to be about $16 to $17 trillion in debt just in the last basically 4 years. There'll be between $5 and $6 trillion added to the deficit. That amounts to about $15 billion a day. It's unsustainable. All the money in the private sector right now, gross domestic product, if they were to confiscate all that at once right now, we still couldn't cover the amount of reckless spending that they're instituting right now. As to a solution, we got to come to a balanced budget resolution. We need to make some serious cuts. Entitlement spending is a big issue here, and there's some great ideas out in Congress right now with some of the Ryan budget plans. There's a lot of good in that, but what we're seeing is a push from the Democratic leadership to just continue on the same path of reckless spending. And you have to ask yourself, what American right now in the last 4 years has doubled their own personal debt, and what American right now in the next 4 years plans to double their personal debt again with no means of paying it off? No one. So we really need to rein in spending, and then as a secondary issue is we have to start reducing the taxation on the private sector. The private sector is the only source of revenue for the government, and if we continue to tax at the rates we are, we're going to crush the private sector and there won't be any money for anybody. Well, some people would consider it to be the social safety net. Okay? It's fine to have a limited and defined social safety net, but what we've seen over the last decades or so is social dependency evolved from this. Entitlement reform is definitely necessary. We did it back when Clinton was in office. Newt Gingrich was the head of the Contract for America, and we really saw some decent reforms out of that, but over the years afterwards we saw a decay back into expanding social dependency and social services. And I equate that to a business model of the far left. their business model is to grow social dependency. Their end product of their business model is social dependency. So here in Baltimore City, for instance, they target a certain minority group there, but if you take that model out, you take it over and you place it in LA, they target another demographic. If you take it up in Alaska, they target another demographic. It's their business model. And once we understand that this is their business model to grow social dependency, then we can take the emotionalism out of it and the idea of racism and all stuff, take that away from it and realize that we got to do something from the structural standpoint of things. And part of that's going to be, we're spending millions of dollars in social services now. Put in place educational programs. In Baltimore City, we have 50,000 abandoned townhomes. We're spending money now for people in social services. Let's teach them trades to rebuild their own neighborhoods. Let's start a true shovel-ready project down there. And then eventually these individuals can become more economically productive and ultimately turn from tax consumers to tax producers. How much time do I have to answer that? Well, we've seen a lot of executive powers overstep the bounds, and I think that some of this is definitely an abuse of power. To detain an American citizen or to target that individual as an enemy combatant without due process, I think leads us down to a slippery slope. Where does that end? Okay, at what point do we start limiting the powers of the executive orders and such? So I'm very concerned about that, and I would like to see a lot of that eliminated if we're going, and a lot of those powers need to go back into the hands of the Congress, the legislators that are responsible for putting these laws and everything together. So, personally, I'm against public sector unions. If the government is the body that's going to define how employees are treated in the private sector, I don't understand why we would necessarily need public sector unions. I have a big problem with public sector unions, secondly, because it's the private sector that's funding the government, and the government employees are now being paid from revenues that are pulled from the private sector. So then part of their wages are now going to public sector unions. So in fact, the private sector is paying for these public sector unions. I don't have a problem with public sector unions from this standpoint, where if they're an active group to help institute reforms that enhance productivity, guarantee safety, and those types of issues and efficiencies. Okay, where they can, government's a bloated entity, and if you can have people that would actually be there even more on a voluntary basis, not in a paid position, where they're actually trying to do something good to make government more efficient. I think that would be an acceptable role, but for them, for public sector unions to go out and use dues to help fund political campaigns, I'm strictly against all that type of expenditures and use of public sector unions. Well, we were told for years that Social Security was a contribution. Now all of a sudden we're told it's a tax, and that the contribution will be put on a tax holiday for a year and a half. Well, that's the only means of funding Social Security. And if they really wanted to give us a tax holiday or tax break, then they should have done it on the employment wage end, not the Social Security end. We're going to defund it for the next year and a half, so sooner or later, as you mentioned, they're going to have to either taxes, claw back the money somehow to pay for the lack of contributions that are going to be, quote, in a holiday from basically last year to now. So the whole concept of this being a tax holiday, I disagree with. If they really wanted to help Americans out, they would have lowered their overall tax rate for the employment end of things, and then also started to cut back on their spending and reduce the capital gains tax, which would have put more money in people's hands, as well as get rid of the personal property tax, which would help small business owners as well as other individuals, and get rid of the death tax. Those three alone would have been more of a stimulus package than quote, giving a tax holiday on the Social Security contributions. Well, we just passed for almost 2 years now, not quite 2 years, a defunding of it. So we're adding more problems to Social Security. So, like I said earlier, somehow or another they're going to have to make up that loss. And the question is, how are they going to do it? They're not, after 2013, I'm sure all of a sudden we're going to get this, well, we have to add more tax, higher tax revenue to pay for the deficits we now have. I think Social Security should be reworked. I think the younger generation should have an opt-out or an ability to put their money into an earmark plan where it can grow for them and never be touched by politicians. One of the problems we obviously know about is that the money that's been put into Social Security is not static. It has not stayed in the Social Security fund. They've been borrowing against it, writing IOUs, so our politicians collect it from us, put it in a fund, and then spend it, write an IOU that's predicated on the full faith and credit of the United States government, which is the taxpayer. So they take it from us as a contribution, then they spend it, write an IOU, and then eventually that IOU is due, which is our tax money, repaying the funds that they already took from us. So it needs to be completely revamped, and we need to eliminate the possibility of politicians having access to that cash, and then also expanding Social Security beyond the borders that it was originally intended to do. Well, I got a great graphic I could probably show you that would define how this would work. But government spending will not stimulate true economic productivity. It'll create economic activity. But once the money is pulled from the private sector, put in the government's hands, and then spent, okay, that money truly cannot generate tax revenue because it's already been pulled from the tax base. Okay? So once that money goes from the private sector into the government's hands and over on this side of the equation, every time you spend that money and people pay taxes with that money, whether they buy something or use it to pay unemployment taxes and so forth, it's on this side of the equation just recirculating money that's already been pulled from the private sector. Okay? This idea that we can pull more money from the private sector to help, quote, stimulate the economy is a farce. It doesn't work. 3.5 years of it. It hasn't done anything. Our economy is worse than it was by many markers, okay, and we've had some blips and we've had the stock market go up, but a lot of it's not really true money. Well, just another example of a government bureaucracy gone wild. They top-down controls just do not work. I mean, everybody wants to be a good steward of the land. We've got technologies out there, and businesses don't want to be polluting, if you will, and because with the internet now, companies can be put on notice for the free market and go, well, you're doing this, we're not going to deal with you. So, yeah, we've got refineries shutting down. We've got 3 of them shutting down in Pennsylvania now, the Philadelphia area. We've got 2 refineries that have been on hold since 2006. You got, I think it's called Hyperon, actually up in North Dakota, which is supposed to be a large energy campus that has been mired down in EPA regulations and is supposed to be able to produce 400,000 plus barrels of refined petroleum. We have another one down in Arizona that have been mired down since 2005 in EPA and federal regulations. We need to get these things online. We need to streamline them. These things are state-of-the-art, consumer-driven, entities, if you will, and we have a government that almost seems purposely dead set to keep us in an energy, what I call a homegrown, American-made energy oil embargo. We got plenty of natural resources in the ground. Yeah, we're producing more right now, but it's on private sector lands. The federal government, under Barack Obama, has issued 50% less permitting in federal lands since he's taken office. So if we really want an all-the-above energy program, which is what I'm for, we also have to institute and believe that we have to have an all of the below grade energy policy included in this, which is going after our natural resources of fossil fuels, the oil, the coal, and natural gas. We've seen Barack Obama institute an executive order to preclude any new coal-fired power plant to be built. Well, there's technology here in Maryland that's being evolved with algae that's grown from strains of algae from the Chesapeake Bay that can actually consume the CO2 from these plants and then produce high-quality oxygen as well as high-quality pharmaceutical-grade oils. Then we could put that would enable us to put these coal-fired plants back online, and then put our coal miners and so forth and our businesses back online, which would produce jobs. The whole pipeline scenario, building the lower half when we really need to start from the spigot. I mean, what good is having the valves if you don't have the source? The Import-Export Bank under Barack Obama lent $2 billion to Petrobras in Brazil. Now they have an office in Texas. We have a foreign, state-run foreign oil company drilling off the coast of the Gulf Coast with an American office now. And why aren't we funding our own oil companies? I mean, we have an energy policy right now that's being promulgated by this administration that is recklessly spending our money on solar and green technologies, and we're for solar and green technologies, but when it's ready and market-driven, not artificially propped up by the government. I don't expect people to trust me right off the bat. I expect to earn their trust, okay? One of the things my campaign is about is not about electing just Frank Mirabile. It's electing myself as your voice, as your representative. You will see as our website starts to develop, you're going to see not just my face on there, but all the people that are part of our campaign. I truly want to see people behind me, and I want my staff behind me to reflect the broad spectrum of our district, which is from urban farming districts all the way down into the, from rural farming all the way to urban city. Large business owners to small business owners, house moms to working moms, house dads to working dads, government employees to private sector employees. You're going to see behind me the volunteerism and the people that are becoming part of our staff, a great cross-section, and you're going to see those faces. And what we're going to do is start having town hall meetings where it's not my message, it's your message that I want to carry. So when ultimately the media starts going after me, and I know they will, and this is not an invitation for that, but I know they will, I will be carrying your message. And if they attack me, they will be attacking you. Unlike Elijah Cummings, where he carries the far-left extremist ideology, and the only thing he can do to defend himself is demonize people. I don't want to demonize people. I will not demonize people. We're going to pull from broad spectrum, from the successful groups to those who want to be successful, and marry them together. And we can do this, and we can actually get things done. Will we agree 100%? Probably not. But can we go down a path where we can understand each other and work together towards a true common goal and really empowering people? Yes. With Elijah Cummings, we haven't seen that.